Assalamualaikum all, my name is Rakay Gibran Algani. I'm from group 4 and today we are going to talking about Islamic law on war and how it could be compared with modern war on law or humanitarian law based on the Geneva Convention. So as a source, the main source I'm taking from this book, Hukum Perang Islam or Islamic War on Law, Islamic Law on War. It's a very credible book. It's thick. It's written by Ahmad Al-Dawudi. It's pretty thick, and yeah, maybe it's standard, yeah, but it's very reliable. 1 out of 3 pages from this book is only dedicated for the sources. It's coming from a lot of sources, so it could be very trusted. So now we start from the background, jihad. So jihad is basically the struggle in the way of Allah, and it came in various ways, not only about war, and it's already be a huge misconception among scholars, especially from the Western world, that thinking that jihad is a way of struggle or war against disbelievers or non-Muslims. Of course, it's wrong, yeah. It's already stated here. It's a big misconception about jihad. In fact, jihad come in a lot of ways. Thinking, learning, developing Islam, carrying the name of Islam in the good manner, in the good way, is a part of jihad. And fun fact, in Islam, it's also told that giving good suggestion to the leader is a good way to jihad. It's a best way of jihad. So at the same time, Islam told us that rebellion, protest, demonstration, whatever that normally seen in the democratic world or the modern system is not really encouraged in Islam. We are more encouraged on giving good suggestion to our leader. We can complain, but we cannot do it in the violently, and it's already part of jihad also. So basically, yeah, jihad is coming in various way, and people are often misunderstood about this, especially those from the West. Now we talk about the methodology on Islamic law of war. So it's based on the Quran, Sunnah, and Ijtihad. It's written in the page 109. I already highlighted it. So yeah, it's written that experts, scholars in the law, Islamic law, are taking from Al-Quran as a primary source. It's a revelation from Allah. It's coming from Sunnah, or the practices of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Ijma, or the consensus of argument and consensus among scholars. And as a backup, there are also ijtihad. So it's basically using our logic to think about what could be good, what could be wrong, and how the best way to solve a certain problem. And then it based on the fiqh. And one part of the fiqh is international law. So it's also written in the page 108 that one part of fiqh is international law. It's number 7. The fiqh is number 7 written here. And one of the biggest problem is we are mixing between Sharia and fiqh. Sharia is of course different because fiqh is about how we understand, and the Sharia is basically the law. But the fiqh is about how can we interpret it also. And unfortunately, there are a lot of differences in understanding about how the law should be, because we have a lot of scholars, and each scholar could have their own argument on how the law should be. That means we have also a lot of differences about how can we understand the Islamic law and how can we interpret it. That means a lot of parts like how is it allowed or not if we want to start the rebellion against the leader. That's actually pretty much debatable actually, yeah. I'm saying that it's not permissible because a lot of them saying it's not permissible, but some of them saying it's yes. So we just taking the general part. What I'm saying here is just about the most acceptable one. And now we enter about the methodology and application of the Geneva Convention. We make what's the difference. We already talked about the Islamic side. Now we talk about the Geneva Convention. So back then, when I'm taking the subject of international law, it said that treaty is one of the main sources of the Islamic Islam is from international law. Yeah, One of them is Geneva Convention, some of them like Roman Statute, and a lot more related to that, including Paris Agreement and so on. So it's basically in the Geneva Convention is basically an international treaty that needs a ratification. So agreement to be legally binding, it must be ratified by an independent country. So if your country are required to ratify it, so it could be legally binding to the country itself. And in practice, they have ICRC, or International Committee on Red Cross. It's basically it's basically international movement about Red Cross that using international law as their basis, and they're practicing international law, including the Geneva Convention. But they are working in a lot of protocols, like they need to respecting the sovereignty and so on. And back then, different from Islamic war, Islamic law on war, they are based on the history. It's different from Islamic that based on the Quran, Sunnah, and so on. Geneva Convention is based on the history, like the Mahabharata. It's told that back then, when war is more permissible, they stop the fighting when the sun is set. And they are also thinking that killing children and those who are unable to fight, it's called of coward. It's act of coward. You should not doing that. Like, okay, why you kill those who are unarmed? Why you're not fighting against those who are strong to fight? That's later be evolve and getting take a role important in the today's system.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Introduce my name. My name is Muhammad Daffa Alfino. I will try explain about Islamic war law. The rule of law in the role of Islam already exists in the first years of Hijriah. This rule was developed based on the teaching of the Quran. Fighting in Islam is commonly referred to as jihad, where jihad means fighting in the context of war. Jihad is carried out if there is an attack on the Muslim community. Then self-defense is a form of jihad. So the implementation of Muslim war, it can be justified as legitimate self-defense. And in terms of helping fellow Muslim, or it can be if there is a violation of the peace agreement. Islam also stipulates that war must be conducted in orderly and disciplined manner, so as not to be easily provoked, and so that no civilians are injured. In addition, Islam also stipulates that in war situation, Muslim soldiers must treat enemy prisoner humanly, and prisoners of war can be released with or without ransom. When Abu Bakr dispatched the army led by Usama bin Zaid in 632, he gave 10 pieces of advice that strongly emphasized the value of humanity, even before term human right was known. The first, don't kill women. Second, do not kill the elderly. Do not tear down abusive buildings. Do not destroy trees. Do not hide any spoil of war. Do not kill children. Do not kill or damage trees that are bringing fruit. Do not slaughter the goats or camels except for food. Do not burn dead palms or other trees. Do not run away from the battlefield. To implement these policies, it's necessary to have a competent war commander. Therefore, Islamic military law stipulates that a proactive leader must be mentally and physically mature, or a war commander must be physically and mentally healthy and war commander must not have debts, either property or other things. In jihad, it have two kinds. The first is offensive and second defensive. Jihad is divided into two Islam, namely offensive jihad and defensive jihad. Offensive jihad is related to the conquest of the country that reject the Islamic system. Before carrying out offensive jihad, Muslims must give three options to the country: voluntary convert to Islam, before kafir zimmi by paying jizya and get protection, and rank as an Islamic citizen. The purpose of this offensive jihad to spread and enforce Islamic law throughout the world, and the law is fardu kifayah. Defensive jihad is jihad that is carried out to defend oneself when Muslims are attacked. Their land is colonized or operation occurs. The law of defensive jihad is fardu ain, a personal obligation for every Muslim who is able, because this is a form of self-defense and honor. In defensive jihad, Muslims do not initiate warfare, but respond to enemy attack. Thus, in Islam, defensive jihad is a war of self-defensive that is obligatory for every Muslim when attacked, while offensive jihad is an offensive war to spread Islam, which is undertaken after giving the option of peace and its collective obligation. In Islam, different arguments is commonly things, and there are different interpretation between the Sunni and Shia school of thought. In Shia, defensive wars of reclaimed Islamic territory are not justified unless the fundamental principles of Islam are truly threatened, while in Sunni, defensive wars will only be undertaken if there is a strong belief in victory. So in modern conditions, wars to reclaim territory are not considered obligatory and peaceful solutions are encouraged. Contemporary challenges arise when non-state group claim religions legitimacy but often violates basic principles of the Islamic laws of war, especially in the treatment of civilians. A major consequence of the application of the Islamic law of war is protection of human rights. Even if the situation of conflict is the basis to respect for life, honor, and basic human rights, and encourage peaceful settlements, negotiations, and reconciliations where possible. In the modern context, these principles are often in line with international humanitarian law, such as the Geneva Conventions, especially in the terms of the protection of civilians and the prohibitions of excessive violence. Moral values and the contemporary relevance. The Islamic law of war emphasizes moral values such as justice, humanity, and damage limitation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mufty Hakim from Class J Ikral, Group 1. Before start, I apologize if my voice sounds different. Today I'm not feeling well due to the flu and cough, so please take care of your health. Today, I'm gonna explain about the Geneva Convention. The Geneva Convention are a series of international treaties that regulate the humane treatment of war victims, including wounded soldiers, prisoners of war, and civilians in conflict zones. These conventions consist of four main agreements adopted in 1949 after World War II, which updated and expanded earlier treaties dating back to 1864. The four conventions cover the protection of wounded soldiers on the land and also at the sea, the treatment of prisoners of war, and the protection of civilians during armed conflict. In addition to the four main conventions, there are three additional protocols that strengthen and broaden the scope of protection. Protocol 1 in 1977 addresses the protection of victims in international conflicts and emphasized the prohibition of attacks against civilians and their means of survival. Protocol 2, also in 1977, deals with non-international conflicts such as civil wars, while Protocol 3 in 2005 establishes the use of the Red Cross and Red Crescent emblems as symbols of humanitarian protection. The Geneva Convention applied to countries that ratified them, and currently almost all countries worldwide, 196 in total, have ratified these treaties. The conventions are legally binding and form part of customary international law, meaning that even countries that have not ratified them are still bound by the fundamental humanitarian principles they ensure. However, the effectiveness of their implementation depends on the political will of states and oversight by organizations such as the International Committee of the Red Cross or ICRC. The operational mechanism of the Geneva Conventions involve obligations for states to distinguish between combatants and non-combatants, prohibits torture, and ensure humane treatment of prisoners and war victims. General provisions in each convention regulate violation and abuses, as well as enforcement and legal procedures. Serious breaches of the convention can be prosecuted as war crimes in international courts such as the International Criminal Court or ICC. Historically, the Geneva Convention emerged from the need to regulate warfare with clear humanitarian standards, initiated by Henry Dunant in the 19th century. These conventions form the core foundation of international humanitarian law, continuously evolving to address the challenges of modern conflicts. With widespread ratification and universal recognitions, the Geneva Conventions have strong binding power in international law, although enforcement still faces political and practical challenges on the ground. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Satriyo Wiradarmawan, and today is about my conclusion. So as just said, from all my friend has been present and also explained about the topic that we discussed to you all. That if we look on how Islamic law and humanitarian law perspective on the humanitarian thing, I would say that they all have their own characteristic. And also there's a fun fact, and we know that the Islamic law has implemented those humanitarian laws since for a long time ago, before the Geneva Convention was upheld and established the humanitarian law. But however, even though that Geneva Convention is really, I would say, the most perfection of the humanitarian law, Islamic law has actually implemented those kind of things that has been set for the Muslim people or the Islamic people there. And because of that, war also has, has some of the ethic, and also there's something that has need to be avoided, like if in Islamic laws on war or jihad, we can't attack women, we can't attack children, or we can't, break any property that the enemies had. However, I will call that Geneva Convention was the the most perfection of the humanitarian law. Sorry, and Islamic law is as the early concept of the humanitarian law, and I can call it that the humanitarian law or the Geneva Convention result that raised to the agreement of the humanitarian law. It was kind of has the little inspiration from the Islamic law and jihad for this kind of thing. But the thing that I really like from both things that both Islamic law and the humanitarian law has their own characteristic. If Islamic law are focused on the ethic, are focused on the how the the behave of the Muslim to fight on jihad, because jihad not only for war but also for one desire, fight not only for physics but also fight for the non-physical, like education, knowledge, wealth, and any kind of thing that are non-physical. And also this was implemented for the Muslim people as well. And it's also the same for humanitarian law. However, humanitarian law are more a lot of scope. Is for all state head has been involved as the professional actor or as the actor of the international relation, because even though that that state can go war, but in the humanitarian law that state also cannot do their thing on war, like they can't break any kind of property, same like Muslim. However, for humanitarian law there's a lot of scope that has been that has been explained, that has been fully I would say fully understandable on how they're avoiding this, because of that humanitarian law focus on army, focus on victim of war, which is kind of in the era of Muslim at that time it was not being implemented, only Muslim that implement those, and also some religion that has implement the humanitarian thing, but not all of them use that. And in the era of the early of Muslim has implemented this kind of thing, as I said just now. However, in the Muslim era, I mean the outside of the Muslim area, many country, I would say, many empire country, they implement those. So they used many kind of forces that avoided the humanitarian ethic. But in the Geneva Convention, it was established by the ICRC. It was established by many people on how they want to treat the victim of war, the one also follow the war, and also the thing that they must be avoided. And I'll say that both the Islamic law, the humanitarian law has their own characteristic. But for me, humanitarian law is the most advanced of the humanitarian law on fully thing, and Islamic as the concept for the humanitarian law on the Geneva perspective. But for Muslim, it was kind of the thing that should be followed and should be obeyed. So I think that's all from me. So I guess that's all from us. We'd like you to enjoy our videos. Well, we hope that our video can give you guys a lot of knowledge on this. And I think that's all for us. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye bye.